Welcome to The Joy Shift. I'm Kiley Suarez. If you're brand new here, this show is for women who have spent years building a life that looks right on the outside while quietly losing themselves on the inside. Women who are competent, capable, and carrying more than anyone around them realizes. And if that's not you, you're probably going to know someone who needs this episode anyway. Before I get into today's conversation, I want to introduce you to a concept I come back to a lot in my coaching and on this podcast. I call her the achieving self. The achieving self is the version of you that learned to survive through performance, through competence, and through being the one everyone could count on. She built your career. She held your family together. She made it look effortless. She got you here, and she is not the problem. But here's what I've noticed working with hundreds of women. She was built to achieve, to prove, and to earn, but she was not built to simply be. And that gap between the woman who produces and the woman who actually wants things for herself is what everything I'm talking about today. A long time ago, I thought the answer was becoming better at carrying it all, better at helping, better performing, better at holding everything together for everyone around me. And honestly, I was good at it. I was good at building things. I was supporting things, holding things, helping other people move toward their dreams. My kids' dreams, my husband's medical practice, beautiful homes, beautiful memories, a full life, a life with so much in it that I genuinely cared about. And maybe you can relate to that too. Maybe you've spent years helping everyone else become who they were meant to be, while quietly losing track of who you were becoming. But during my coaching training and through conversations with over 100 women, I started noticing something I couldn't unsee. So many high achieving women were living with this quiet emotional disconnect from themselves, not because they were failing, because they had become exceptionally good at surviving through performance, through responsibility, through competence, through being the one everyone could count on. And the more I listened to women talk about their lives, the more I started recognizing pieces of myself inside those conversations too. Women who had spent years becoming who other people needed them to be. Women who could tell you exactly what everyone else needed, but froze when asked, "What do you want?" And I realized how hard that question had become for me too. Not because I didn't have desires, but because I'd spent so long prioritizing achievement, usefulness, and responsibility that I had stopped building a relationship with myself outside of what I could provide and produce. And this became one of the deepest parts of my work as a coach. Because before most women can figure out how to change their lives, they first have to identify what they actually want. And that is not just a mindset question. It's somatic, it's emotional, it's behavioral, it's unconscious. It lives in the body, in the nervous system, in the patterns we repeat without realizing we're repeating them. It lives in the yes we give too quickly, the rest we postpone, and the dreams we downplay, the resentments we explain away, the versions of ourselves we keep performing because she's the one everyone knows how to need and feel comfortable around. So the work is not just asking what's next. The work often begins with asking what's true, not what sounds impressive, not what earns approval, not what keeps everyone comfortable, what feels true. And that's the part almost nobody teaches women how to do. Women like this learn to normalize a lot. They normalize exhaustion. They normalize being the emotional regulator in every room they walk into. They normalize carrying invisible labor nobody else notices because they've gotten so good at making it look effortless. They normalize not asking for help because somewhere along the way, they decided needing help meant failing. They normalize never fully arriving in their own lives because there's always one more thing to handle first. And the hard part is that most of this gets rewarded. People praise women like this. They call them strong, reliable, selfless, driven. And then sometimes when a woman is too successful, too visible, too ambitious, too unwilling to shrink, the world turns around and punishes her for the very traits it applauds in men. We see it all the time. A woman builds something, earns something, claims something, and suddenly the court of public opinion has a lot to say about how she did it, whether she deserved it, whether she should have been more humble, softer, quieter, less much, even if it's attributed to her marriage or somebody that she's attached to. So women learn to walk a very narrow line, achieve but don't threaten, succeed but don't enjoy it too much. Be strong but not intimidating. Be capable but still endlessly available. And nobody pulls them aside and says, hey, I think you disappeared a little inside this version of yourself. Because externally, everything still works. The bills get paid, the birthday gifts get sent and bought, the emails get answered, the family functions happen. The woman herself is the only thing slowly going missing. And that loss is subtle at first. It looks like not knowing what sounds fun anymore. It looks like feeling irritated by things that never used to bother you. It looks like resenting people you deeply love because everyone seems to need something from you all the time. It looks like sitting in silence and realizing you don't even know how to access yourself without a task attached to it. A lot of high achieving women become incredibly disconnected from joy specifically, not happiness, joy. Happiness is reactive. Joy is relational. Requires presence, openness, desire. And the achieving self was never built for presence. She was built for performance. I realized I didn't know how to rest without trying to earn it. I would sit down to relax and immediately start mentally organizing what still needed to get done. I realized how uncomfortable stillness felt, how quickly I reached for productivity, how often I treated quiet like a problem to solve. And I know I'm not alone in that. There are many women who have the same feeling. There are so many of us who can manage a crisis, build a life, raise a family, hold a room, support everyone around us, but feel completely disoriented when nothing is being asked of us. How often I said yes automatically before I even checked whether something was actually a yes for me. And I started asking myself a question I now ask a lot of women. If nobody needed anything from you for one full day, who would you be? That question can feel strangely confronting when your identity has been built around being needed. There's grief in this process because when you start loosening your grip on the achieving self, you also start realizing how much of your identity was built around being needed, useful, productive, or impressive. And that can feel disorienting even when the change is healthy. There's grief in realizing how long you abandoned yourself just trying to survive well. There's grief in recognizing how often you perform strength instead of experiencing support. And there's grief in understanding that the version of you that got you here cannot fully lead you into what comes next. But grief is not a sign you're making the wrong shift. Sometimes grief is what happens when an identity stops being a survival strategy and starts becoming a choice. And that is why this feeling tends to show up in very specific seasons of a woman's life. Not usually when everything is chaotic, but often right after she finally gets a little space to hear herself think. Sometimes it happens after a divorce when she realizes she spent years organizing herself around someone else's needs, someone else's moods, and someone else's expectations. And now she has no idea who she is without that role. Sometimes it happens after career success. She spent decades climbing towards something, proving herself, building something meaningful, surviving inside systems that asked her to constantly perform competence. I thought this would feel different, is the feeling that she will get. Sometimes it happens when the kids grow up and the house gets quieter and the caregiving shifts. The constant urgency softens just enough for her to notice herself again. And suddenly she's face to face with a version of herself she hasn't checked in with for years. Sometimes it happens in your 40s or 50s or 60s, not because something has gone wrong, but because there comes a point where achievement alone stops being enough to organize your identity. The roles start changing. The external validation loses some of its charge. The endless doing stops numbing you in the same way. And underneath all of that movement is often a much quieter realization. I know how to take care of everyone else. I know how to achieve. I know how to survive, but I don't fully know how to belong to myself. And that realization can feel terrifying at first. But honestly, it's one of the most important moments in a woman's life because it often the beginning of her becoming conscious again, conscious of what she wants, conscious of what she's tolerated, and conscious of how long she's been abandoning herself in the name of being strong. And once you see that, it becomes very hard to unsee. And if today's episode made you feel a little more seen, a little less alone, make sure you hit follow wherever you're listening so you can come back for more conversations like this. New episodes of The Joy Shift drop every Tuesday and Friday. And if someone came to mind while you were listening today, send this episode to her. Sometimes hearing the Me Too changes everything. Until then, I hope you remember this. You do not have to earn your way back to yourself. I'm Kiley Suarez, and this is The Joy Shift. I'll see you next time.